So I was talking to a tile retailer recently, and he was talking about how he wanted to figure out a way to predict what he should import as far as inventory is concerned. And that was an interesting question because you want to make sure that you import the right stuff. You want to make sure you empty your inventory throughout the season. And the worst thing you can do is order the wrong stuff and you end up sitting on it and you never make any money on it. And so this is a definitely something that AI can help with that. So this is one of those problems that AI has a solution for. So where do we start with that? Well, one platform that's really good for that is Snowflake. Snowflake is basically your data science platform where you can bring in data from all kinds of places, and they really make it easy to create AI agents that you can then use to find information about your data. And it's a great internal use product as well because it makes it easy for your team to really query your database and your knowledge sources all in one place. So in this video, we're going to go step by step and learn how to actually implement and create an AI agent in Snowflake. Let's get started. Okay, so here's a quick overview of what we're going to be building. It's a grocery sales AI agent. And what it's going to be able to do is you're going to give it a query right over here, and it's going to go through and basically answer your question based on the type of questions you can ask. And depending on if your question is asking about like particular data, it's going to go into the data source that has tabular information. And if your question is related to some form of context business question, let's say promotions, anything to do with, let's say, like customer service and like that, then it's going to go and use semantic meaning to look into sort of like a RAG and actually answer. So this is an overview of what this is. Let's do a quick query just to see how this works. It's going to think about determining where the answer might be, and it's going to generate a SQL query, which then it's going to use to determine to go and actually search the database. And you're going to see in a second, not only is going to give us some text question, but it's going to actually create a chart and table. And this makes it really great. Like this is RAG 2.0. So let's go ahead and figure out how to build this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is a bit of setup. I have here setup.sql, and you'll get that in the GitHub repository. But essentially what we're doing here is we're going to create a database, and we are going to then load this database with a table that contains some sales data that we are generating artificially. You might already have a database with a ton of data in it already. I know Snowflake already comes with some pre-existing data, demo data that you can use. But just for the sake of this demo, I've generated my own data. And here's the code that actually does that, and that generates it. And what we're generating is some grocery sales data, really that what it is, and dividing into different types of products that the grocery carries. And we'll see later why that's important because we get to ask different types of questions, get visualization, all that kind of stuff. And over here, we're doing some quick checks. And we're also going to create some stages here, which is going to be analyst and search. Analyst is basically querying the sales data itself. And over here, search is going to be some documents we're going to upload later that we can then ask some questions on. Okay, so essentially what's happening is that our orchestrator is going to take in a query from the user, decide what type of next actions it should take. Should it look into our tabular data or should it look into our text-based data and then get the answer, okay, based on the type of question the user asks. So that's what this is. So we're going to basically done this. Now we're going to also need a warehouse. So you got a code here for you. You can run, make warehouse. And essentially you can think of a warehouse as an independent, it's a scalable cluster of compute resources. Usually what you use it for is to run SQL queries. And in our case, we're going to call it Cortex Analyst, WH. Okay. So if you don't already have one, you can create it. And then, so we're going to set that up. So let's go ahead and run this for now. And that's going to execute. There it is, all done for us. And if you go into Database Explorer, and we remember we called it Snowflake Orchestration Framework. When you click that, and then we here under public, this is our table. This is our sales data. And you can go into columns. You can see through our columns, a little bit of a data preview. As you can see, we got some data here. Dates, marketing spend, product age, product categories, all that stuff. All right. So we're going to play around with this. And here's where our stages is we got analyst, we've got search. Now, to make it easy for Snowflake to look into our table and give us the information, we're going to make a YAML file. And what that does is that it gives business meaning to our data. Okay, without it, Snowflake is just going to see columns and tables. That's what it is. Now, I've already prepared one. I'll show you what that kind of looks like. And by the way, this is going to be the different type of data that we're going to load in a second. But essentially, our YAML file is right here. And that's what it looks like. All right. So it gives us some semantic meaning, okay, to our table. And one of the easiest way to make one of these is just to load your data, or at least a portion of it, into ChatGPT, and it can just make this for you. All right. So that's one way to kind of go about doing this. Okay. Again, I'll share this in the GitHub repo, and you'll have that. Okay. And then the next thing is, these are the search data that we're going to also load. So we got some information about the business itself. So Fresh Valley Markets, the grocery, okay. Some information, promotional structures, okay, loyalty program, eligibility, all that kind of stuff. More information right here. Some barbecue event information. All right. Again, just for demo purposes, but yeah, well, this is actually what we're going to do. Okay. So let's go ahead and load this. First thing is, in the analyst, we're going to load the YAML. Okay. Grab that and bring it right here, and make sure that you're in public. Click on analyst. Once you've done that, you can press upload. Perfect. And that's that. Now let's go into search. And we're also going to upload our files. And as you can see, they're right here. All I'm going to do is just grab the three and bring them here. And as you can see, click on search. Okay. We're in the right schema. Press upload. And that's going to load our data in. All right. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take all of this and chunk it into and make a table for this as well. So all the chunks and semantic the information about this is somewhere that we can then reference. Okay, so we need to chunk this. So we're going to go back to our project, the workspace. And here is where I have Cortex Search, where you're going to do that. So we're going to create a table called docs chunks table. Okay. And one thing I want to make sure, I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier. You want to make sure you're in the account admin role, and you can just do that by going here, account admin, because that's the kind of privilege you're going to need to run these things. So you're going to go ahead and do that. And then here, there's a function here to do all the chunking. Okay. And you can play around with this a little bit if you wanted to, but essentially that's what I've set up. And then you're going to ingest it. And then you're also going to set up Cortex Search Services. Okay. And yeah, it's a little bit of checks here, but essentially that's what this is. So let's go ahead and run this. And that's what's going to do is going to take all those three files that we uploaded and then go ahead and chunk them and make a table for us. And this task does take a second. I'm just going through all the documents and perfect. So that should be all done. Now let's go ahead and take a look at that too. Database Explorer, go back into our database, public, Cortex Search Services. You can look at our tables here. Here it is. Data preview. Boom. Okay, that's our chunk. Those are our chunks. Okay, we'll use this in a second. All right, so we've done everything we need to get set up. Now we can go ahead and create our agents. Go to right here, Cortex AI. Looks like kind of like these little stars. As you can see, I don't have an agent, so we're going to go here and create an agent. And the database we're going to work with is Snowflake Orchestration, right? Public. And let's give this a name. We're going to call it Grocery Sales AI Agent. All right. And you can actually change the display name so it doesn't look like this. Essentially, that's what's going to look like on the UI. We're going to use, obviously, the UI offered by Snowflake itself. So let's create the agent. As you can see, this is some information that you can start filling out. Description, you can say you are a helpful assistant, answer the questions to the best ability. Just something, again, you can, and then you can load up the different types of questions here. We'll do it in a second, but let's go ahead. And the first thing we're going to do is actually load up some tools. So this is exactly where this is very important. This agent is deciding what tool it should use based on type of query that comes in. So on the Cortex Analyst side, that's where the structured data in our table, the sales data is going to be. So we're going to go and hook that up. Go to semantic model. We're going to go click on our database, public, and analyst. And this is our YAML. This is what's giving semantic meaning. And remember, so that's why we're selecting this. Give this a user-friendly name. We're going to call it sales data. Okay. And here is some description that you can use to give the guide for during orchestration. You can sit there and make something really detailed based on your particular use case, or you can just click here and let AI generate for it. Notice what's happening. It's looking at this and saying, okay, well, that's what you're working with. Let's come up with something that makes sense. And so it does a pretty good job as creating a description. And this becomes just kind of a bit of a prompt for using this. The warehouse, we decided we're going to use the Cortex Analyst, WH, there's one here. And for timeout, I just put in 60 seconds. Okay. Let's add. Boom. So that's done. Now we uploaded obviously a bunch of PDFs. So let's go hook that up too. Add. Okay. And go back into our database. Click public KBA. And for ID, chunk ID, and title, we're going to do chunk. Okay. Now we're going to say document questions. Okay. And here you can say something like, look through the match or answer the user's question with relevant information. Okay. Oops, that's done. Add. Now, if you had any other tools that you wanted to set up, this is where you would add some custom tools. And this is where it gets really interesting, because then you can start giving more ability to this agent to do more things. But we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to do these two things. And as you can see on this right-hand side, it's actually like building for you, and you can kind of see how it's going to look and all that kind of stuff. And actually, you can start playing around with this and asking some questions. Let's look at the next tab. Here is where you give it some instructions, and you can be quite like details with this in terms of what you want to give it. I've written out a prompt already that I'm going to share, and let me just load that up. So here's the orchestration information. I've also included things like make bar charts where necessary or line charts and stuff like that. So this could be really good because in Snowflake, you can actually do that, which is kind of cool. And then over here, the response instructions as well. Okay. Again, this will be in the repo. You can take a look at it. That should be good. Access, we got the account access. You can add other form of access, but that's actually all there is to it, really. And here we can kind of play around a little bit with the UI and ask some questions where you can just kind of click and most common types of questions you might be asking. So let me go ahead and load a few questions now. So as you can see, I'm including a question that is related to the database and a question related to the content that we provided. And just so that we can test this out. So let's go ahead and save this. As you can see, it's got updated now, and you got some information right here. I'm going to go back here. This is a description that is actually related to the UI right here. So I'm going to change this to something like this. Okay, let's resave this. Okay, so we can ask a bunch of questions, but let's kind of play around with it. Which product category generates? Let's see what it does. As you can see, it's going through doing some thinking. It's deciding that this is something related to the revenue table that we got to go, and it's generating a SQL to then go and query, and then it provides the answer in a second. Now, if I have, there it is. Look at that. And I got some visual in there as well. It can be a table, it can be a chart. It's quite interactive. It's very interesting. And here's the breakdown. Now, let's create a new thread. Now, so this is what it is. Now, before I show you the next question, I want to also show you something really interesting. If we go back, okay, we're going to click right here, preview Snowflake. You know what? Add this to Snowflake Intelligence. Okay, add the agent. And Snowflake Intelligence is really interesting. Like it's basically like made UI for you that you can then just go in and you can basically pull up any agent you want. So you can click here, you'll have more options too if you have more agents, but essentially you click whatever agent you want to work with, and you can see all this stuff. And then you got here as well. Okay. So just like ChatGPT. So let's click this question now, see what happens. And here you got agent details. You can see more details. See, as you can see, it's doing some thinking, recognizing that it needs to go into. And he went in and found some similar information regarding what I just asked. As you can see, there wasn't an exact match with my question, but we did its best to clarify. And these were sort of generated questions that I just kind of come up with. But you can determine what type of things that your users are using, and then but we're using semantic meaning here, so it's not exact. So it's sort of it's basically RAG, as you can say. So yeah, that's essentially what this is. super cool to be using Snowflake for this particular use case. And especially if you're working with as an internal inside a company, you want to make it easy to access information. This is a perfect way to do it with Snowflake. And they do a great job when it comes to working with tables, data, especially structured data. So one of my favorite things is that with you working with Snowflake is that you can bring both RAG on semantic related information regarding like just text, combine that with tabular querying and finding semantic meaning in a table, and having one agent that orchestrates between these two different types of use cases. And so you don't need to have two different agents for this kind of thing. One essentially sits at the top, determines, and then it uses the different tools to do that. Thanks for listening. See you next time.